Well, good afternoon. Your mouths are full, so you can't say good afternoon back. I know folks are still going through the food line. I've been asked to kick off the program, so food's important. So please, during this program, go back for seconds. There's a lot of food over here, and help yourself. I am so excited to be introducing the beginning of programming for this year's Common Book. The Common Book program is very important to me. It's a 7-year-old program. It was started by me and Dr. Mongi, a faculty member who we all love dearly, before she was taken from us. She and I believe very strongly that it was important for this community to read fiction together, because fiction unlocks doors around social justice issues in the way that other mediums can't. We read all this fact stuff, we read all this professional stuff, but if you really want to dream about possibility, look to fiction, and look to fiction like the kind of fiction that we're reading today. We've read some fantastic books. The first book in the program was 9/11 from a Muslim immigrant's point of view. That challenged many of us. Last year's book was an awesome book. We had the author on campus. Don't think we're going to get Miss Morrison here, but but we were very fortunate to have the Canadian author of last year's book here on campus, and that was a Chinese immigrant's developmental view of being a trans person. Very instructive, I think, for many of us. Today's book, so how many of you have read it or have cracked it open? Okay, a lot of people, good. So I'm at 86%, which tells you how I'm reading the book, right? I'm not doing the paper version. Who's halfway, or who's halfway, or who's all the way through? Okay, so looks like most people in the room have cracked open the book already, and it looks like a lot of people are through it already. I think this is a very exciting selection for many reasons. For me, I've only read a couple of Ms. Morrison's books. They are this one's super eye-opening to me on many levels. It is. I was just had it confirmed. It is her first book set in modern times, examining race and difference and intersectionality, as she always does. But what kind of blows my mind, too, is she's 86, so that means she wrote this when she was 84, which means we've all got a lot of work to do to catch up to her level of productivity, don't we? She started writing when she was 40, so talk about second and third acts to all the students in the room. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Berry here talk with us today about this book. And a special call out to those who are joining us online, including Dr. Berry's parents. We are very fortunate, parents, that you sent us such a wonderful faculty member. I leave you in good hands. Rabia, to start off.
You sure is ugly. I imagine a young Lula Ann standing in the doorway of her mother's room, her mother's sweetness looking up from her bed at the disturbance in the doorway, and being reminded of the source of her late-night tears and cheap red wine binging, the reason her good man Lewis left her alone with a baby. All she could do to get back at God for cursing her with this blue-black child, with witchy eyes and loosely curled hair, resembling that of Aborigines of Australia, was to name the burden of dark skin. You sure is ugly. Toni Morrison opens this present-day story of Lula Ann with a vivid description of a baby rejected, not only by society but by her parents as well, simply because of the color of her skin. It sets the stage for why Lula Ann, who later changes her name to Bride, just Bride, develops into the age-old cliche of the strong black woman. Seen but not heard, consumed but not considered. She's an impressive businesswoman who commands attention with her deeply melanated skin set on an all-white background. To the outside world, she has it all together, yet she is unsure, fumbling her way through her identity. She rejected the darkness of her early life as Lula Ann, rebirthing herself as Bride, just Bride, no middle name, no last name. Like Malcolm X, she attempted to free herself from the emotional and psychological shackles of her childhood by naming herself, writing her own narrative. She has spent her childhood trying to earn her mother's love, the mother who was overly punitive, overly critical. Lula Ann watched as Sweetness, who recreated her name herself, in her own efforts to rewrite herself as a light-skinned woman to a dark-skinned baby. She watched as Sweetness fought herself to love her only child. Sweetness believed that she loved Lula Ann the very best way she knew how. She loved her through proper preparation for a world that was always going to see Lula Ann's skin first and last. She says, I still had to be careful in how I raised her. I had to be strict, very strict. Lula Ann needed to learn how to behave, how to keep her head down, and don't make trouble. I don't care how many times she changes her name, her color is a cross she will always carry. But it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not. Unable to pass because of her rich hue, Bride passed on her former life by detaching from it. She left her home, her mother, and her name. As a scientist who explores phenomena that affect the human condition, and a healing agent of change invested in revolutionizing how we engage, disrupting the most deleterious phenomena, I conceptualize Bride from a psychosocial perspective framed within a social critique, noting several themes that emerge throughout. There are many that were noteworthy of discussion. Initially, I intended to focus on invisibility, as the title of this talk indicates. But as I went through and dug into the work to write this talk, I found that there were a few broad themes that consistently showed themselves that made significant impact on the lives of the characters that also paralleled real life. So allow me to do as the old church mothers would say, and go where the Spirit led me. I hope that's all right with y'all. Is that all right? Okay. I'll spend our time together talking about and inviting you to think about trauma, invisibility, and silence. Not as separate constructs or concepts, rather as co-conspirators in the oppression and destruction of the human spirit and of whole communities. In psychology, we define trauma in the DSM-5 as an experience where the person was exposed to death, threatened death or threatened serious injury, or actual threatened sexual violence via direct exposure, witnessing the trauma, learning that a relative or a loved one or close friend was exposed to the trauma, and or indirect exposure due to job professionals, so first responders, medics, those kind of people. This is the baseline of what must be present before a post-traumatic stress disorder can be considered as a diagnosis. After establishing that baseline of the occurrence of trauma, we go on to assess for the B, C, D, E, F, G, and H criteria, right? Re-experiencing, avoidance, negative thoughts and feelings, arousal and reactivity. Have the symptoms lasted more than a month? Has it caused functional impairment? Are the symptoms due to something other than illness and substance abuse? The caveat to these symptoms is that they must occur in response to a traumatic event. Generally, we see a marked difference in behavior pre- and post-traumatic event, meaning that the premise is that life was typical or normal before the traumatic experience. Well, how do we account for those who have never known typical? When trauma is their normal, how do the effects manifest? God help the child provide us with several examples of what it could look like. Experiences of trauma can make people feel invisible and hypervisible at the same time. Victims of trauma often experience dissonance, paradox, if you will. On one end, to keep from being abused, they do their best to become small, discreet, avoiding attention at all costs. On the other end, they wish to show themselves powerful and courageous. They want their abusers to see them as strong and no longer a vessel for the venting of the abuser's disease. Simultaneously, the abuser utilizes various tools to maintain that dissonance. Dissonance keeps people off balance, vulnerable to mistreatment. A powerful and effective tool often used is silence. Silence is blinding, it's numbing, it's dumbing, it's deafening. It can signal fear. It can also signal and imply agreement or indifference. We see silence reoccurring as an undercurrent throughout the entire book. Beginning with Sweetness and her silent denial of Lula Ann. She silences Lula Ann's desire for a mother by having her call her Sweetness instead of Mom. Sweetness teaches Lula Ann to deny herself and her own brilliance, both in hue and identity, with lessons of good behavior that are anchored in becoming completely invisible to the world around her. She instills self-hatred by insisting that Lula Ann swallow traumatic experiences. The pain from the ridicule and rejection from adults and other children based solely on the darkness of her skin, bearing witness to the horrific rape of a young boy by their building superintendent, a man who was entrusted with all the lives of the people in that building, telling a lie that sent an innocent woman to prison and being made to keep silent about all of it. There are horrors that would follow Lula Ann into her adulthood. Despite her attempts to abandon her old life, like Sweetness said, no matter how many times she changed her name, Bride would have a cross to bear. However, it was not her skin that weighed heavy, but the silence. It was a burden so heavy that Bride sought out the woman she sent to prison. She wanted to compensate her for the 15 years that the woman spent in prison for a crime she did not commit, based solely on a false testimony of school-age Lula Ann. Well, she found her. She also found a beating, as Sophia, as I can imagine many of us would do, went upside her head, breaking jaws, blackening eyes, and quite literally tossing Bride out of her cheap motel room. Bride internalized this trauma as well, seeing herself as deserving of the beating. So rather than file charges, she chose to do what she's always been taught to do, remain silent, and crawl back to her corner to lick her wounds. After Sweetness, we are introduced to Booker, who provides a space for the first time for Bride to speak, to reveal the most vulnerable parts of herself, and then without a word, he disappears. Further exploration into Booker's life reveals trauma from a sudden loss of his brother. His life was subsequently altered by his family, who he felt imprisoned him by their desire for his silence. He wanted to honor his brother through announcement and memorialization, but his family wanted a more subdued grieving process. In turn, he responded with silence. He left his family to find his voice through music. But there he found more of the same. Him playing on street corners and empty bars, hoping the note would catch the ear of someone in the vicinity, hoping the note would make someone listen to the despair that his brother's death caused. Yet in his search, he ignores the person right in front of him who wanted nothing more than to hear him speak. Rather than speak and provide an opportunity for healing that he and Bride both desperately needed, he does what traumatized people often do. They traumatize others. He leaves. His disappearance, while initially salt on a physical, psychological, and emotional wound, spurs Bride's journey to find her own healing through speaking. She decided she was going to reclaim her time. She was not going to allow Booker to just leave her and not tell her why he left and offer her an explanation. So on this manhunt, because she went looking for him, got in her car, and she went looking for him. On her manhunt, she meets Rain. Rain, a formerly homeless, abused and neglected youth, finds Bride on the side of the road, a remote road somewhere in a remote town, where Bride had nicely crashed her Jaguar into a hill or a mountain of some sort. Bride is nursed back to health by the white couple who rescued Rain. One day while she was standing outside in the rain, wet and hungry. In the weeks awaiting physical recovery and the repair of her vehicle, Bride befriended Rain. She listened to her, protected her in a way that the white couple had not done. Rain, who had been silenced in several ways, including the changing of her name from whatever it was to Rain by her kidnappers, explains to us upon Bride's departure from their home that I feel sad now that she's gone. I don't know who I can talk to. Evelyn and Steve, they're good to me, but they frown or look away if I say how it was in my mother's house, or if I start to tell them about how smart I was when I ran away. In their good intentions, Steve and Evelyn perpetuated the trauma of Rain by silencing her. They silenced her at every turn. When they took her, literally kicking and screaming, when they changed her name, and then when they refused to listen to her story. So let's pause for a moment, taking a moment of silence to consider this story of silence. Where have we seen this before? Where in real life do we find persons taken from their homes, kicking and screaming? Their names changed, and then the story of their life and legacy later squashed. Where we find benevolent white people enacting their kindness on another, telling them what's good for them, and then expecting gratefulness. Where do we see where people are socialized to accept their abuse through the imposition of silence about the horrors they have seen and experienced? Where do we see the rejection of a child by its mother country? Where do we see people looking for an outlet, a way to claim their belongingness, to be able to speak and tell their story? Might Toni Morrison have been telling the story of present-day Black America through the lives of Sweetness, Bride, Booker, and Rain? Does she shed light on the way that silence has been used to marginalize and annihilate Blackness in America? That Blackness is only regarded as beautiful and worthy of recognition when presented upon a white canvas? Do we have Toni Morrison to thank for the opportunity to explore trauma in silence as it relates to the racial and gender oppression of Black people in America? The paradox of invisibility that is created? We do. Police brutality, a phenomenon not unfamiliar to Black Americans, is simply a reinvention of the overseer. His job in 1720 was to keep the niggers around. The methods used included, they were not limited to rape, flogging, solitary confinement in the hole, and or a bullet. In 2017, we organized and renamed his job is to keep the Blacks in line. The methods utilized include, but are not limited to, rape, flogging, solitary confinement in the hole, and or a bullet. I know these things to be true. How do I know? See the 13 Black women in Oklahoma City who were hunted and raped by Officer Holesclaw. See Martise Johnson, who is a college student beaten within an inch of his life by Charlottesville police. See Khalif Browder, who is held in solitary confinement at Rikers for more than 800 days. See Tamir Rice. See Fernando Castillo, Alton Sterling, who were all shot and killed by police. Just like 1720, the goal is for us to see, but not to speak. It is to silence and intimidate into submission. Then, enslaved Africans understood they were not to speak, so instead they protested silently. The intention? To make it clear that they were not okay with their condition, by flipping silence on its head, making the vitriol for their condition and their oppressor apparent without saying a word. Hunger strikes, a poisoning of crops, decrease in production, running away, it spoke volumes, often causing hypervisibility and focus, and significant increase in violence from the overseer. Today, Colin Kaepernick takes a knee in silent protest of the loss of black lives at the hands of police. In turn, he loses his career. Black women are called bitches for raising their sons who care to protest the extinction of black lives by the President of the United States. Today, we also see black Americans protesting through succeeding. Yes, succeeding is revolutionary. We were never meant to thrive in this land. We were only meant to survive in this land. Survive for the sole purpose of servitude. We are continuing to have firsts in 2017. Our glow up is real. And in response, overseer, police, white supremacy has increased its focus and significantly increased its violence against us. The violence around the country motivated by racial hatred has increased by 20% since 2016. Consider, how has the historical and present experience of trauma affected the entire black community in America? Might it have something to do with educational, economic, and health disparities we see among black Americans, as compared not only to whites, but other ethnic groups? Might trauma have caused psychological and emotional damage and reactivity that has been passed on generationally, such that we can be active participants in our own oppression? I would say absolutely. I would say that the imposition of silence as a tool to intimidate and annihilate has been relatively effective. Toni Morrison in God Help the Child illustrates the power of silence in a powerful way. It leaves a sour, bitter taste in your mouth. Do you taste it? That bitterness? It doesn't feel good. So how do we get it out? The bitter taste. We find one way to begin to address it in God Help the Child. Booker recounts for us how prior to his brother's death, his parents would conference with him and his siblings weekly. His parents would ask them, number one, what do you know to be true, and how do you know it to be true? And two, what problem do you have? This is an exercise in questioning and critical thinking. Critical thinking and questioning is antithetical to oppression and submission. As a nation, we have much of this to do. We must consider our history, question what we know to be true and how we know it, and then talk about the problems that we have. When Bride set out after Booker, this is exactly what she intended to do. When she found him, they were finally able to have a conversation. They spoke and told their truth. They spoke of what they knew to be true, how they knew it, and then what problems they had. In those conversations, they found common ground and began to formulate solutions of how they could address those problems. They acknowledged that it wouldn't be neat and pretty, and that it was in their but if they both committed to the process and agreed that it was in their best interest, they could do it. We need to come to that same place. Acknowledge that our history is messy and that fixing it won't be neat or pretty, but ultimately it is in all of our best interests to find some common ground and begin to formulate solutions. In the end, like we do here in the United States every 3 minutes, Bride and Booker came to conceive a child. We can only hope that we all have the ability to come to and implement solutions. If not, God help the child. I want to take this opportunity to thank the book club. I want to take the opportunity to thank the book club for committee for choosing this book and allowing me to kick off a year-long conversation. I'd also like to thank Toni Morrison for her genius. She's a Nobel Prize winner, a Pulitzer Prize winner. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2012. She's an HBCU grad. She graduated from Adler University, where she got her bachelor's degree, and then she went on and got her master's from Cornell. She's authored several books, some of the most notable of them being Sua, The Bluest Eye, Beloved. She is currently Professor Emerita at Princeton University. She's also my aunt, in my mind. In my mind. I heard her. I love her. And thank you for all of you for listening and reading the book. I'm going to open it up for questions. And of course, if you don't have questions, I have questions because I'm faculty and I always have questions. So, questions, thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to slide right into it. That's fine. We can participate. We can do our first group activity. So, I would like for us to practice the critical thinking that Booker's parents did with them, right? What do you know to be true? How do you know it to be true? What problems do you have? Let's practice. No, it's an individual experience. What do you know to be true? How do you know it to be true? And then what problems do you have? I'll start. What I know to be true is that I have a lot of people in this world that love me. How do I know this to be true? Half of them are on this this thing. Hey, Janae. Problems that I have that I still have to prove my credential. My PhD isn't enough. You would think after going to school for 25 years that people would just believe you, but they don't.
I can hear you online if you don't get on it. Hi, everybody. I'm Marquita. I'm actually first year PhD in the CFT department here. Glad to be here. I want to say first that this book, I felt like in my master's degree I didn't have time to really enjoy my reading. And so when I came here and got it at orientation, I believe, I could not put it down. But I wanted to say, piggybacking off of what you just said about yourself, it's the same way that I feel. You know, sometimes I feel like the more credentials I get, the more that I do, in part it won't be enough. And I don't know, you know, I was just questioning myself about this. So we were having a discussion in one of our classes, and I was saying, you know, there's another classmate, she was just kind of saying, you know, so why do you feel that way? Why are you having such a, you know, an issue? Especially if you look at where I came from. I am the first one to go to earn a bachelor's and up in my family. My parents had me at 16. So it's not that. I thought it was until I got to this point in my life. And so I just felt like, you know, yeah, even with this PhD, I don't feel comfortable with, like, you know, walking in a room and owning that. So I just wanted to say that that's something I'm also working on, you know, understanding that I owned it, you know, I earned it rather. And, you know, that I can walk in, you know, my ability to do and to accomplish and achieve regardless. But I just wanted to say that I can identify with that from you.
Absolutely. So on the flip side of that,
Yes.
what's a truth that you have, something that you know to be true, and how do you know it to be true?
So my truth is, again, that I worked hard to earn, you know, what I have and where I am. And I can walk in that truth. Knowing that I just don't have to earn it and just walk in that truth, but I can use it, you know, to also, you know, possibly benefit, you know, someone else, or to, you know, kind of like hold someone else's hand along the line. I know that I'll encounter that later on, and just to, you know, like speak that truth into their lives as well. So, did I answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. Get on a tangent, but that's it's okay. All right.
So there are many themes in the book. There are like a million. Like this class could be the book. like a class by itself. There's colorism that we could talk about for ages. There's intersectionality. There's actual like sexual abuse trauma. There's so many things that can be talked about, and which is why I chose a broad topic, so that as the year goes on, we can pick more specific things to talk about as it relates to the book, because there are many. What it means to be a Black woman who is trying to be her best self and live her authentic self in mostly white spaces, white and male spaces, and how difficult that can be, and what space that leaves or really doesn't leave for error or questioning, right? And what that does to always have to be sure. And when you're not sure, pretend you are. Mike, she's coming.
What I know to be true is I was born and raised just outside of Detroit in an all-white suburban community in the 60s, and realizing so in 67 I was 8 years old when the riots in Detroit happened. What I realized at an early age what was wrong and what was right. I had on my block kids who would get together and talk about what they wanted to do to Black people, or who they were, or when we were on the bus going down to the Art Institute, thinking about how our parents told us to lock the doors every time we went into Detroit. And then realizing later on how much denial I had about my own parents, and what views they had, and what was racist and how wrong. And so and it takes to this moment to think about and to be able to thank them, because I realized what I never wanted early on to these people, that that they were wrong, and yet I was too afraid or wanted to fit in to say anything, and how much that still eats at me to say anything, or to be fearful of to say the right things. However, to be silent is just as bad as the others. And so that's still, those memories haunt me, yet at the same time I use them to gently move myself forward, and strive to see everybody as equal, and to treat everyone as equal, and to somehow undo the wrongs every time it comes into my existence, every time I go to my family or I hear something, and how it in effect infects my nieces, and just being wrong and being ignorant and being prejudiced and biased. And so to this moment, thinking about, do I say anything, do I not, and share those experiences, because they tear pieces of you inside. And if you don't say something, it'll even tear you more. So that's what I know to be true. And to see it and to live it and to hear it and to be experiencing it at this moment is horrific.
What problem do you have?
What problem do I have? To not shut out my family when I want to get them together, to not cause arguments because we're supposed to be all on a holiday. I rent a cottage so that everybody can get together. And so each time there's something that comes out, that I sometimes silence myself just for the sake of everyone keeping their prejudice. And so I know, though, that there are, as soon as they get away from their parents, there are certain things that I need to do and to say to them that is right, and so that they can think on their own rather than what their parents. I'm just horrified at what my sisters and their husbands have said to their kids and how they are. It just, how do they come out of the same family? I don't. So the problem is to fit in, be a good brother, be a good uncle, be a good son, and at the same time spit in their soup whenever I can.
Thank you for that visual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Kia?
I hate microphones. First, just thank you for this presentation and kind of jump-starting this. I think this was awesome. Very informative, very powerful. And if we could have this posted somewhere, that would be great. I don't know how that works.
Look at me, I don't work IT.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want,
Awesome.
I'll ask my mom. I'm sure she got it on record.
So let's see. What is my truth? Okay. So what do I know to be true? I guess that the first thing that came to mind was that I'm a change agent. Just because that's something that I value, something that I'm like active about in the community, things that it just aligns with my personal beliefs in like equity, equality, and things along those lines. So I guess that's how I know it to be true, because I actually like live it and embody it and try to implement it as much as possible in my personal life as well as like professional life. Then the last part, what was the other question? What problem
do you have?
Oof, grad school. Everything grad school. Just put it under that umbrella.
It's appropriate. This too shall pass. Thanks. Because I definitely still have more questions. If you don't have any, you want to keep to the questions. Great. So, just thinking about how you guys understand trauma, how do you understand trauma and its effects on development on both the individual micro level and the community macro level? How do you guys understand that?
I'm Eddie, by the way. I think how I understand it is that it is transferable. So on a macro level, if trauma isn't being addressed, healed, taken seriously, it then seeps into a macro level. And those two things are interchangeable. So, for instance, if I am invalidated, or a person is invalidated in an institution when they voice their beliefs or their perspectives on things, and it's not taken seriously, it's invalidated, that in turns creates a traumatic experience for me on a micro level, a personal level. And so if on the macro level, the authenticity is not welcome, is not appreciated, to voice how those things are affecting them, then it's just going to perpetuate the trauma that I will have. So in more layman terms, if I express to peers that we see these racial issues in the world and we talk about how to handle them in the confinement of a classroom, but when we leave the classroom, it's not brought with us, then we're not really about that change. And so if I've shared in that conversation how that's affecting me and how I, hope and encourage, white people and non-black people in those spaces to find ways to work at that issue, and they agree in the space, but then when there's opportunities such as this, or opportunities that are presented on a systemic level, here, and they're nowhere to be found, then that's an internalized thing that I have to take with me. And that is how I see them being connected. That if we don't address things on a larger level, because they do have some type of effect on that individual or those groups of individuals on a personal level, then it's going to be perpetuated.
And I think to add, okay. Just to add to that point and to speak more to the micro level, I think trauma has sort of become like infused in like one's personality and how they see the world, how they see themselves, and they have a lot of like obviously like traumatic responses to the world and the ways that they engage in interpersonal relationships, and so it has sort of this almost like blanketed effect in their overall like self-presentation. And I think that also connects to the macro level in a way, because if you have like, for example, like lack of access to resources and the traumatic effects that that can have, and how you then start to internalize what that may mean for you and make meaning of that, just kind of on a more broader level, I guess.
Trauma on a micro level, at least from my experience, has a tremendous effect on the macro level. Because when that person is trying to go ahead and get care one way or another, because they are going to try to get care some kind of way, every person that they interact with, because we're all interconnected whether we want to be or not, every person that they go to in search for that care has to deal with their trauma, whether they recognize it as trauma or not. So I have witnessed people who experience a trauma, and then because they could not personally afford to take care of whatever services they need, their care ends up being paid for by the rest of society, either figuratively or literally. That person isn't able to contribute their gifts to society, so we are deprived. And we also have to financially pay for their care when they go and seek out those services. So every time we try to sweep some kind of trauma underneath the rug, we just end up paying for it in another way, whether we recognize it as a paying for that trauma or not. You don't get out of dealing with it. And I think it is the perception that we believe that we get out of dealing with it that is the biggest missight that we have as a society. It is, what is an ounce of prevention and worth a pound of cure? If we would just deal with the issue before it becomes bigger, because each time you suppress it and try to sweep it under the rug, it just becomes a bigger thing to come out later. So the macro often ends up paying for it in a compound. It's like an exponential thing. They pay for it exponentially. Each time that person says, well, I think I've kind of gotten over this, and they reach out to go and do something, and the world says, oh no, you cannot do this, or you can't talk about this, or this is not appropriate, and they never quite get to deal with it, they start over from square one, and it usually ends up being a bigger and bigger trauma that they end up having to deal with once again and again and again. And we, in turn, continue to be deprived of whatever gifts that they came to bring, and still also have to pay for whatever it is that they need to try to bring those gifts to the surface, because they're not going to stop trying to heal. We each want, their body is a self-healing organism. It's going to try to seek out whatever it needs to feel safe, secure, and fully actualized. So we just keep paying for it over and over again. So how much do we really want to pay for trauma?
So these last minutes, I just want to close by encouraging you guys to really engage in this idea of critical thinking. I think we talk about things a lot, but people don't actually think critically and question things. We like to just accept what we know, accept what we've been taught, and like that's gospel, that's it. But you have the privilege of being in spaces where people are thinking, and you should open yourself to engaging in that thinking. You can't fix something, right, if you don't engage it and think about it. You'll never wash your shirt if you don't think it's dirty. You'll just leave it there. So it's important for us to critique the world in which we live, the systems in which we engage, the people who are in our homes, and the people we have in our circles, because none of us have a completely socially just circle. In one way or another, we all do have a privilege in one space or in one part of our identity or another, and there are people who are in our space that share our identity, who participate in marginalizing identity that's not the privileged identity. And so it's all of our jobs to engage the people in our circle so we can start the bottom-down effect and deal with the top-down effect, right? Because micro influences macro and vice versa. It's not a one-directional process, it's a bi-directional process and really an all-around process, right? And so since you're here, allow yourself the opportunity to be made uncomfortable. Allow yourself the opportunity to grow. You should not be the same person you were when you started, because you're not supposed to be. So if you haven't read the book, read it, because it's great. And then you will go search more for Auntie Toni, because she's everything. So thank you guys for coming. There's more food. Yay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berry. I especially appreciate that last call to action there, and I especially appreciate you bringing the questions from Booker's family up to the community. That's your auntie being a teacher, I think, and posing those questions for us all to think about. So let's keep on using that. Thank you very much. Let's have one more round. Well, fantastic job. Thank you also to the Common Book Program leader who is here. Ariel, please stand up. Let us vet you. If you're on the committee, stand up, please. Who are the committee members with us today? No? Michelle? Okay. Thank you all. What is the next Common Book Program activity?
To be determined.
I will repeat that into the microphone for the people joining us. To be determined. So if you have ideas about what we should be doing around this lovely book to continue this conversation that Rabietta started with us, march into the library and talk to Ariel. Okay. Thanks again, guys.
Bye, babe.